Now let's look at making histograms in Excel. So same data we looked at before, our February weather data 2007 to 2019. If you click on the PRCP column, you can go to Insert, and in this case, instead of box and whisker, just select histogram. And make that a little bit bigger so we can look at it, give it a nice title like February PRCP 2007 to 2019. And let's add axis labels as well. Now remember, in a histogram, your horizontal axis is always going to be that quantitative variable you're looking at. So in this case, it's PRCP, and we'll say that's in inches for anyone looking at this. And remember, the vertical axis is always frequency. Frequency in this case is number of days. So if we hover over this bar, it brings up a value of 259. So that tells us there were 259 days in our data set that had between 0 and 0.12 inches of rain. And that's by far the tallest bar, telling us that's by far the most common precipitation event in February is either no rain or a small amount of rain. But there is what we call a tail extending off to the right, where there were 46 days that had between 0.12 and 0.24 inches of rain, 28 days in the next bar, and so on. Now, keep in mind that this is the smallest bar we can see, but that's not actually the maximum. We know the maximum was 2.19, which is all the way up here. That's why Excel generated this chart going all the way up here. It looks like this is all just empty space, but actually the bars are just too small. For some reason, it's not drawing it. You can see this is 50 and 0, so the one bar is not getting any room on it. So it really shows you the tail on this distribution, but it's not really perfect. If you made this thing much, much larger, it might show up, but I'm not sure how big you'd have to make it to get it to work. We can do the same thing if we go look at the temperature maximum data. And I already did that over here to the side. We had our box plot we looked at in the last video and our distribution here. So this histogram shows you the maximum temperature. Basically has one big peak. This is a little lower, but in general, like if you were looking at this, it would look like one mountain. This is just a little bit lower here. And on this one mountain, the highest bar is, the value is 7. There were 7 days that had a high between 62.6 and 65.9. There was only, I believe, 1 day, that was our minimum, down to 23, but the way this is labeled, you wouldn't be able to tell from this what exact value it is, somewhere between 23 and 26.3. Excel generates all of this automatically for you, but there might be times when you don't want it to do that. For example, it's using a bin width or a class width. However, I don't know, there's different terminology to refer to it. But the width of each bar is, 3.3, which is weird. That's formula driven. Sometimes you want things to be, more like round numbers. So if you double click right on one of those numbers, it brings up this sidebar. And then if you click on the one that looks like bars, go to the axis options. Now you could set the bin width instead of 3.3, maybe you just want it to be 3 exactly. And notice that changes the shape a little bit, but not like a lot. It's still one big mountain. This one's still a little lower. You still have this upper end here and the lower end here. It's not all that much different. You might also want just a specific number of bins. Maybe you only want 6 bins. It'll go ahead and make that for you. Again, it does some weird things with the rounding and stuff. You can change that by going in here, axis options, number, make it a number, decimal places, 1. There's a lot of things you can change. A lot of times you can just use the defaults. When we make histograms by hand, we usually use nice round numbers. Like we'll go by 3s or 5s or 10s for the bins, like 20 to 25, 26 to 30, and so on. But using Excel, you can usually just use the defaults. So when we looked at box plots, we looked at comparison box plots. There isn't really such a thing as comparison histograms in Excel. Other software programs, there are a lot of statistical analysis software out there that researchers use that will actually do that. And our next module, we'll look at a web page that has some, well, maybe. But if you want to do that in Excel, if you selected all of these and made a histogram, it would just make one histogram with all those numbers. So the closest thing you could get would be to make a histogram, title it February 2007, PRCP, and give it axis titles as usual, and then select all your 2008 numbers, insert histogram, and put it below this one, and you'd have to title that Feb 2008 PRCP But then, of course, it's difficult to compare these because this one, the bins are going by 0.15s, and this one they're going by 0.2. And you could try to change that if you double-click this. You could do the axis options over here. You can make the bin width 0.2 instead. But then you have another problem, is this one has 3 bars that go from 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, but this one has a 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, and 0.8. And you notice there's no option up here to like set your starting value or your ending value. So the comparison histograms don't really work very well in Excel. There's probably ways around it, but not something you'd usually go with. Yeah, so look at box plots if you're looking at comparing them in Excel.